mathematics at the elementary level for all 142 elementary schools that we have. So we go out and support schools any way that we can by supporting the PTAs or coming out and supporting individualized teachers. Tonight we have a jam-packed night. I'm super excited. Any night that we have all these people and we're going to talk about math, that gets me excited, right? And we're really going to be focusing on elementary math. And we're going to take you through a process tonight of almost something that some of your kids are probably doing right now. So you can kind of get a feel of what are they doing and what does this look like. So I misplaced my clicker. So if you find it laying around the room, let me know. So tonight, take a look up here at the screen, and this is what we're going to be doing together. So tonight, we're really going to be talking about how are children learning mathematics. Right? First thing I want to tell you, 1 plus 1 still equals 2. Okay? Don't worry, still does. And then we're also going to be talking about what are some of the things that we can do to really help promote that deeper understanding of mathematics for our own children. And then finally, you're going to be experiencing this all through a math workshop. And I'll explain a little bit more about what those are. So math, this is what math is all about. K-12. If you go to a middle school meeting, we'll have the same slide. Or if you go to a high school meeting, they should have the same slide. Because this is what math is about. We want students to become problem solvers. We want them to be able to communicate their thinking. We want them to be able to reason out how do they get there. What's the purpose behind it? No longer is it important just to say the answer is 5. They have to tell you why it is 5. To be able to understand math at a deeper level. Because I can pull out my phone and I can ask Siri, what's 3 plus 2? And it will tell me. Guess what? We're living in a world where all of your kids will have phones at some time. Scary thought. Some of them might already have it now, right? And we're also looking for students to be able to make connections. And when we're talking about connections, we're talking about 2 different types of connections. We're talking about connections within math, but we're also talking about real-world connections. And then the last thing that we really want for students is that they're able to represent their math using different models. This isn't really new. This has actually been around since the 80s, 1980. But the emphasis has really been brought up on it. So if you, how many people have Facebook? Do you have Facebook? Some of you have Facebook? I don't have Facebook. I have this thing called MySpace. So don't know about Facebook is funny. But a lot of people are talking about, oh, the new math. Math, as I said, is the same. 1 plus 1 is still 2. But this is now the focus in mathematics. The process of how we go about doing mathematics. So, some of the things that your students are going to, your children are going to see is that when they're in math class, they might be doing one of these math workshop structures. And basically what math workshop means, student-centered mathematics. If you're like me, most likely you had a math experience where you went to class, you sat at your desk, the teacher stood at the front, and just lectured. Kind of like what I'm doing right now. And you just sat there quietly, and as long as you were quiet, you were okay. So I want you to be honest, because we're going to be playing games together today. So be honest, time to get to know your friends. Raise your hand if you like math. Good. So if I took a quick poll, that's probably about a fourth of you. When students go to school in kindergarten, almost 100% of them already love math. But when they graduate, less than a fourth of them do. And that's why the emphasis changed to those problem solving. representation, the process of mathematics, students understanding math instead of these procedures of what these are. So this structure really focuses on that student-centered learning. Tonight we're actually going to be doing a version, because of time, and you're not my normal class, right? I haven't had you all year. This is the one that I get to have. We're actually going to be doing a focus lesson. We're going to be doing a version of this light blue section where we're going to have a warm-up. We're going to do some focus lessons, and then we're going to do some station activities. We're not going to do the guided math group. Normally in a guided math group, that's when I would pool a bunch of students, and we work on a certain idea or topic. No longer is the idea that I'm just going to stand in front and give the same information to all kids. Because in our classes, we have kids who are working at a level way up here, and we have kids who are still struggling way down here. And it's the job of the teacher to meet the students that they have where they are and move them along. So that's why the math structure is coming along. So what we're going to do is something called a number talk. And maybe you've heard your kids talk about number talks. Anybody have heard number talks yet? No? Yes? Well, we're going to do it together. And so there's some certain rules when it comes to number talk. The first rule is you can't write anything down. It's okay that you're taking notes now, but I want you to solve this problem mentally. All right? The second thing is you're going to turn and talk to a partner. So right now, look at somebody that you're going to turn and talk to. If you don't know that person, say, hi, I'm, and don't leave it blank, that's awkward. Say your name there. Right? Because you're going to, and you guys might, okay. You want to make sure everybody's got a partner. It's important that everybody has a partner. Because remember, communication was one of those things that we're trying to get our kids to do. So we're going to do a number talk. So the very first thing I want you to do is to solve this problem mentally on your own. Don't share yet. Right? Now with the kids, what we do is we have them put a thumb up when they have a solution. And then we ask them, if you have already one way to solve it, try to do a different way. And they'll put a finger up if they come up with another way. All right? You don't have to put your thumb up. All right? But I do want you to solve it. So let me switch it out real quick. By the way, this is the problem. 28 times 4. So the quarter of you that raised your hand, you're like, yeah, this is great. And the 3/4 of you that didn't raise your hand, you're like, uh-oh. It's okay, right? We're going to figure it out together. So we're going to do 28 times 4. So take a second, think about it. About how you got to. All right, so this is what I want you to do. This is a safe place. If you don't know the answer, it's okay. Right? Because school's about learning, we're in school tonight, right? So it's about learning. So what I want you to do is I want you to turn to your partner that we talked about, and I want you to tell them the strategy you're using to solve it. Don't tell them the answer. Tell them the strategy you are using to solve this problem. So turn and talk to your partner. have a way to solve it, hopefully your partner gave you a strategy about how they were thinking about solving it. So I'm going to give you about 30 more seconds to think about what is the solution. If you already have a solution, come on. All right, about 30 more seconds. All right, that was really 30 seconds. All right, so I'm going to stay on your clock. All right, I'll try to duck down, but to use this. Normally in your class, just want to let you know, the teacher does this on the board. They don't really use this piece of it because they want this to be a record in the classroom, so kids can go back and talk about it later on. So, I'm just going to ask for people to call up and tell me what solution, so what is the answer to this problem? I'm going to write down, whatever answer you got, I'm going to write it down. All right, who can help me? 112. Any other answers? Okay, so this is what happens in class. Someone's going to say, oh, it's 100. And then you'll have a kid who'll say, oh, it's something else, right? And you'll list them all. You'll take everybody's answer. Because this is the learning part. So, 112. Now, let's be honest. How many people got 112? Just be honest. Because now here comes the part I'm going to ask you to trust me. And this is what we do with our kids. Who would like to share their strategy of how they got the answer? I'm going to sit down so I'm not. Go ahead. Thank you.
I took 25 times 4 to get 100.
So you said 25 times 4
To get 100.
gave you 100.
Get the remainder of 25 minus 28. I mean, 28 minus 25 to get 3 times 4.
So you said 28 minus 25 gave you a 3.
3 times 4.
And then you said 3 times 4. And that gave you what? 12.
12 plus 100.
And then he said 12 plus 100. And that gave you 112. And I have a question. What happened to this 3? Turn and talk to your partner and say, this is what I want you to say. I want you to say, I don't know what that 3 means. Or I want you to say, this is what that 3 means. And this is how I think he was thinking. Try and talk to your partner. Okay, I'm going to bring it back. So the first thing, I'm going to step out and I'm going to talk to you real quick because I want to talk about what's happening in the classroom, right? So this is happening in your classroom. So your kids did some thinking. They did some talking. They did some thinking. And then they started sharing. And then they have to kind of figure out what other people are doing. So it's all about this collaborative nature. The communication is big. And all throughout, people are thinking, because it's okay, some people don't know where this 3 is. They don't know why that 3 is there. And why didn't we go 100 plus 3 plus 12 gives me 150? It's okay, right? And that's the same thing your kids are going to be thinking. They're going to be like, where did that come from? So I'm going to step back in. Who can tell me where that, what is this 28 minus 25 equals 3 part? What is that? I don't understand. Who can help me? Yes?
The distributed properties of algebra.
Well, tell me about the distributed property. Algebra, you're doing algebra.
28 times 4 is the same as parentheses 1 25 plus 3, parentheses, back parentheses, times 4. But I don't think my 8-year-old knows that.
Actually, he does, or she does, and they don't know, right? So, they called it the distributive property, right? That's exactly what you said. They learn that third grade. That's when they start learning it. They don't have to really name it, but that's when they start learning it and exploring it, because that's when multiplication comes about. And it directly relates to algebra. And number talks directly relate to algebra. Right? These are things you can do at home, right? Just some number problems. Okay. All right. Who solved this problem in a different way? Yes.
I did 30 times 4.
You did 30 times 4?
And because added 2 to the 28 and 2 times 4. And remember to subtract that 8 from the total.
All right, so you got 2 times 4 gave you 8. All right. And what did 30 times 4 give you?
120. And subtract the 8.
So then you subtracted the 8. And why did you have to subtract the 8?
Because I added the 2 to the 28 together.
So that's a big idea, by the way, that just happened. Like, same idea as that. Same idea. And that's what the teacher would say, okay, now tell us about that. Why does that work? So there's a lot of discussion where kids are really grappling with this idea of a number talk. Alright. Notice not one time did I say the answer is 112. Believe it or not, the answer right now doesn't matter. It's the process that they're working. Because the answer does matter when we're sending a person to the moon, right? We want to make sure that that person's going to get to the moon. But especially in elementary, we want kids to grapple with mathematics. Math should be fun. And if math isn't fun, we're doing it wrong. So one of the things I really try to emphasize with parents and with teachers and with students is that when we're doing math together, we have to talk about it. We have to communicate. And it's okay to say, I don't know. Somewhere along the ways, schools kind of changed a little bit, that kids feel like they have to know the answer right away. School's for learning. If you already know the answers, then you shouldn't be in school, right? I think I'm preaching to the choir here. I mean, who comes out for a math night on a Thursday? You hear these people all the time. So we're going to switch to the focus lesson part of our tonight, and take a look at this problem. 12 minus 9. Right? Same problem we had in school. By the way, this is why we're making these changes. Because this happens. It's still 12 minus 9. But kids did all this crossing out. We want this kid. What happened for this child is what we call number sense, right? The number sense has been eroded because they're not talking about numbers. They're not thinking about numbers. Or maybe they're doing flashcards before they're ready for flashcards. Flashcards are okay once your child understands the concept. So in 3rd grade, that's when they start learning multiplication. Probably flashcards is not appropriate at that time. I don't know everyone's child, but flashcards probably are not appropriate for that time. Now, if the child is in 5th grade or 6th grade and they still don't know their multiplication, then flashcards are more appropriate. 3rd grade is when they're just grappling with multiplication. And here's something to think about. Kids learn addition and subtraction from the time that they were born all the way through 2nd grade, which is about 8 years old. So that's about 8 years of their life. And then in 3rd grade, they're supposed to learn all of multiplication. You all are probably saying, that's not right. And multiplication's hard because it's about proof, right? This is the reason why, and you can ask, as a matter of fact, if you go ask the 2nd grade teachers. Anybody have a 2nd grade student there? You're gonna see this. Or you'll see the problem, one of my favorite problems. 200 minus 198. Cross out the 2, the 0, they just do all this. The answer's 2, right? That's what we want our kids to be able to see. See the numbers for what they are as we move forward. So we're going to look at a quick video. And in this video, the person who's doing the talking, not the animating, but who's doing the talking is Dr. Jo Boaler from Stanford University. She's a renowned math educator. And this website, actually it's not a website, this isn't, but it's called ucubed.org. It's a fantastic website, and it's free. Everything on it's free. And it's something that you can do to, there's videos, but there's other activities and games and those types of things found on ucubed.org. All right? Let's take a look at that.
Hi, my name is Jo Boaler and I'm a professor at Stanford. So what is number sense? Let's think about a problem. Let's think about 18 times 5. A student with number sense could solve this in many ways. For example, they might say, I know 20 times 5 is 100. Then I know 2 times 5 is 10, and I'll take 10 away from 100, which gives me 90. We can visually represent that, and visual connections are really important for our brain. So what would that look like if I drew 18 times 5 as a rectangle like this? We could represent 20 times 5 by saying it would be a slightly bigger rectangle, and we'd subtract this blue part. Another way to think about 18 times 5 is to say it's actually equivalent to 9 times 10. And the visual representation of 9 times 10 is kind of interesting. If our 18 times 5 rectangle looks like this, then our 9 times 10 rectangle would look like this. And that 9 times 10 rectangle has the same area as the 18 times 5 rectangle. A third way I might solve this is to say, well, I know 9 times 5 is 45, and I can do that twice to give me my 18 times 5. And that visual would look like this. There's our 18 times 5 rectangle, and this time I worked out 9 times 5 and 9 times 5. And there we have those two rectangles. A fourth way to solve this is somebody might say that they want to break up the 18 to work out 10 times 5 and then 8 times 5 and add those solutions together. And the visual of that is, if this is our 18 times 5 rectangle, then we can find our 10 times 5 and 8 times 5 rectangles, and they would look something like this. Another way, a fifth way of solving it, is not to think of 5 18s, but to break that up and to think of 2 18s and 36, and then we have another 2 18s and 36, and add on a single 18 to give us 90. And that visual looks a little different to our others. So if we have our 18 times 5 rectangle, this time we've broken up the 5 into a 2, and a 1. So we've seen 5 different methods for 18 times 5. Can you find different ways of solving 12 times 9, both numerically and visually? The variety of methods we see is part of the beauty and creativity in maths. All problems can be solved in different ways, and we should embrace that. Number flexibility, being able to work with numbers and see what they are made of and combine them in different ways, is an important part of number sense. If you'd like to see and learn more, come to UCubed.
Now, one of the things I want to kind of talk about that is, you saw Dr. Boaler really do a lot of drawings first, right? So I'm going to say something, and I want you to kind of just keep it to yourself and try to think what comes to mind when I say it. Red ball bouncing. How many people saw R-E-D, the word R-E-D? Anybody see that word? Like red? Did you see a red ball bouncing in your head? Right. Because we think in pictures. When learning something difficult, or learning period, one of the first things we need to see is the visual. That's different from when probably most of us went to school. We did straight numbers. Numbers are abstract and more difficult to understand than the idea of pictures. That's why they say a picture says 1,000 words, right? So one of the things you'll be noticing that's coming home with your kids is that they're asked to draw pictures of what they're doing. Encourage them to draw pictures. Matter of fact, if they cannot draw a picture, but they can solve it the other way, that means they don't have a true understanding of what that is. Every child, they should always be able to draw a picture that goes with their number problem. If they can't, that means they don't have a true understanding. So it really comes down to this. When we were learning mathematics, most of us, right? When we were learning mathematics, we were really focused on the symbolic. That means the number part. Just those numerals, or sometimes letters, depending on what math class you're in, right? But what we want is students or children that are capable to do all 5 of these different types of representations. If you want a student to love mathematics and to understand it deeply, these are the 5 representations. I see people taking notes. I promise I will give this to you, and you can distribute it. All right? But these 5 representations, being able to verbally talk about your problem, being able to put it into context. So often, when we were learning math, it was just 14 times 12. 14 times 12 what? And by the way, only in mathematics can you say something like, you had 48 candles. First of all, you never had 48 candles. In mathematics, you're allowed to say that. Physical. So if your kid is having a hard time drawing the picture, get out material to help them. We call them manipulatives in school. But get out material to help them. Blocks, pennies, whatever it is, to help them figure out what it looks like. Because when we learn, we actually learn in a continuum. Down here, the first thing is materials, or concrete materials. Then we do pictures, and then we do symbolic. So often we jump straight to the symbolic piece. It doesn't work out. And then visual picture. That's a fancy word to say picture, right? Being able to represent it as a picture. All right. That was our mini lesson, right? Our little focus lesson. Now we're actually going to go back in a few minutes to play some games at the long table. All the games are exactly the same. What you're going to need is you're going to need a partner, and you'll need 1 paper, 2 paper clips. I'll show you in a second. And you'll need 2 colored counters. You can either use the chips that are back there, or you can use the cubes that are back there. So a color for you and a color for your partner. Now a lot of you are probably going, I don't know anybody here. This is a good time to know somebody, right? Because you're going to talk about how you're doing this. So the game that we're going to be playing is called 4 in a row. And you get to take the game board home with you tonight if you want. And games are a great way to practice mathematics. I'm going to be honest, I learned to do multiplication by doing flashcards. I did. And it was the worst thing ever, right? And for us who struggle with math, it's like pulling teeth. And if you look at the research behind flashcards, if you do it too early, you actually damage your child's mathematical thinking. That's a warning. So what we're going to do is we're going to play a game of 4 in a row. Enough of that sad stuff. And in 4 in a row, all you need is you need 2 color counters. I'm going to play against myself, so I will win. And you need 2 paper clips. And the way that this game plays is the very first person is going to take their 2 paper clips. Oh, by the way, the object is to get 4 in a row. Right. You can take your 2 paper clips and you can stick them anywhere. You can stick them on the same number. So I'm going to put mine on this 5 and a 4. Well, we can't see. Right? So I'm going to say 5 and 4. So 5 and 4 is, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't say this is multiplication. So 5 times 4. 5 times 4 is 20. So I'm going to cover up the 20. Now the other person can only move one paper. So they need to think, I'm going to move it to 3. Because 5 times 3 is 15. And then the red turn would go and say, ooh, look at this. 3 times 7 is 21. And the first person gets 4 in a row, wins. And then you can play it again. Alright? So, what I'm going to ask you to do when you play this game is you have to, remember, did you hear how I kind of talked out loud right there? I was talking about this is what I'm going to do and this is what I know. I want you to do that. I know it's hard, we're adults and it sounds silly, but I want you to do it. It has a purpose behind it. So if you just kind of turn in your chair real quick, or stand up, turn in your chair, we're going to move. We have game set here, and here, and here, and here. So find your partner. Take a game board, 2 paper clips. Well, I have a child that's not in 3rd grade yet. They're not doing multiplication, right? If you actually Google, if you Google 4 in a row, you'll find boards that go higher for multiplication, but you'll find it for addition, subtraction. You'll find them all. If you Google. It's all there. And actually, you probably can ask some of your teachers. They might have that resource that the other one. All right? And if they can't find it, they can email me and I'll help them find it. But stations are a great way to have fun. And that's what I heard back there. Learning was taking place and fun was happening. And that's what we want kids to be able to have positive experiences in mathematics. So we don't have only 1/4 of the people listening. So I want you to do a little bit of reflecting so far. How did the lesson that we kind of went through today really kind of promote those mathematical ideas? Turn and talk to your partner and say, whether you're talking about the game or anything that the number talks, any of the piece that we talk about, how does it promote? Turn and talk to your partner. that's great. That's actually what every teacher dreams for. Is that when they try to bring their class back, they don't want to come back. Because they're still doing it, or they're still talking about what's taking place, right? That's what teachers want. It's okay, it actually makes me feel good. I actually turned and said, I love this. I told them that. I said, I love this, right? So, let's talk about some of the things you and your partner were reflecting on. And, I'm sorry, but you were talking about one in particular you wanted to talk a little bit about.
Well, just trying to figure out how we could come up with the representations to model.
Right? The representations to model. We actually only did one type of representation. Right? The one representation we did, who knows what it is? Now you're on.
Was it the board on Connect 4 modeling the multiplications?
Well, it was modeling out multiplication, but it wasn't like the array model or the area model or in multiplication. The representation that we did was actually called symbolic representation. The number talk was all numbers, right? We didn't draw pictures today. We would have done that in an earlier lesson, right? I didn't want you guys to do a bunch of drawings today because you're at a different level than most of our kids. But I'm glad you brought that up because it is critical and it is key that we have our kids drawing and using materials to help build that. For example, a scaffold for this game over here is that kids can build or draw pictures or have scrap paper to help support them as they work through that game. I was hoping that we didn't need that here, which I'm kind of glad we didn't. But those are things that kids kind of, they know what they need, right? And that's one of the things that we're really pushing also, not just in mathematics, but in all of their education. They have to say, I don't know this. What do I do to help me figure it out? Because we don't want them to say, this is how I figure it out. Hey Siri. Right? We don't want that. It's okay to do that sometimes. Like, what's the capital of Denmark? Right? That's fine. But we want them to be able to think about, what do I need to do to figure these things out? In mathematics, we want them to use materials. We want them to draw pictures. Someone else had a question. Someone else had a question. Anything else about the goal that we were trying to achieve?
I was going to say, speaking of the challenge that I have with this different approach, and I really appreciate the well-rounded approach because not everyone thinks in the same way. Everyone comes at it, it doesn't mean you're not going to get the right answer, but I find that the drawing of the pictures takes an excessive amount of time, and then they start to rely on that instead of the other models, and then some of the pushback, I know I felt, well, my teacher said I shouldn't do it that way. And I was like, oh, well, what about this or that? And some of the strategies are kind of what you presented, but I think as a parent, you're trying to be supportive of this approach. At the same time, your time is of the essence. And when it comes to standardized tests, time will be of the essence. And I know that's a real situation.
Absolutely.
So what's the strategy?
So the strategy is you want your students to understand what they're learning. That's really what it comes down to. Because what happens is if we go straight to memorization of the procedures, you don't see kids drop out. They don't drop out of high school. We have a very low rate of kids who drop out of high school. I'm not talking about, I'm talking dropping out of mathematics. And normally when that happens is algebra 2. Because for most people, they're at their capacity, and algebra 2 is very abstract. That they no longer math makes no sense to them. And at that moment, they decide, I like math or I don't like math. Believe it or not, they actually made that decision probably somewhere in second or third grade. Because they pushed too fast. So I agree, standardized tests are important, but our standardized tests are untimed, and they can draw pictures, right? I don't want kids to draw pictures forever, don't get me wrong. Mathematics is about efficiency and efficiency. And it's the job of the teacher to promote that students are moving along in that continuum. Great, I see that you can do this with blocks, but can you draw a picture with this? So now we have kids working with blocks and pictures at the same time. And then you go, great, labeling those pictures. What does those pictures look like? What's that mean? And then you move them to the symbolic, right? And I was a classroom teacher. I know the burden of the test, and it comes, right? But I'm not going to let that drive my kids, my classroom. They're all my kids. Yes.
So what's the time frame for all this? Is they're not doing what we used to do, which is memorize and we're doing this new now. So what's the time frame for them to get the amount of time to work the problem than just normally amount of time to do it?
So it depends on the skill, but the idea is that
I'm talking about what grade are we gonna see them, this whole thing come to fruition?
so even in algebra and in geometry, they're drawing pictures, they're using models to discover bigger ideas. Normally in algebra 2, that's where it becomes very abstract. And that model piece, hopefully by then they have that deep understanding that they can move on straight to symbolic. I'm not saying that they don't ever do symbolic. Don't get me wrong. That's it. What I've given out. I apologize. But the idea is that it's not a race to symbolic. That is one representation. And kids who can only do that one, as I said earlier, will not be successful in mathematics. I know I actually talked to a couple people in here that said they were engineers. Right? And when we're doing number talks, you saw people do the flexibility of their thinking. They're like, oh, I'm going to do 30 times 4, or I'm going to do 25 times 4, and then I'm going to add this. That's what we want from our kids. And so I didn't give you an answer like, oh, in grade 5 they should have this, or grade 6. It's wherever your child is. Because you can't skip a step. Because when you skip a step, it causes a gap. When you cause enough gaps, then learning stops. Yes, and then.
So what do we do at home when they come with the...
Great question. Next slide. I'll promise. Great question.
I have second grader. He already memorized the multiplications. Did I kill his way of thinking?
Now this is what you're going to do. You're going to go, show me what 3 times 2 is. And is 3 times 2 the same thing as 2 times 3? We all say this. But do they know that? So I'd be curious if they could draw the arrays or the different models there are for multiplication. You didn't reach out. You're good. So how can you help your child? There's really some basic things you can do. The first one is encourage your child to work through the problem. And what we mean by that is you are asking them questions. You're just, why do you think that? Is that always going to happen? Where else might this happen? Don't give them the answers. Right? Because by giving them the answers, you're actually telling them you can't do math without them. They're going to rely on you. Just like my 15-year-old son can't live without this thing, right? It gives him all the answers. Ask your child to explain their thinking. Now, if your child knows that 3 plus 2 is 5, and you know they understand it, don't ask them to explain that thinking, because that drives them crazy. But when they're doing harder problems, say, why do you think that? And you have to ask that question when they have it right and when they have it wrong. Because if we only ask it when they have it wrong, they're just going to say, oh, I got something wrong. So you have to ask it both times. And really encourage a child to solve problems using different representations. We talked about, I really focused on 3 representations today. But encourage them to do that. The more that they're able to do that, the better in math they will be. And what can you do? Love math. Even if you didn't raise your hand at the beginning, fake it. You love math, your child will love math. In this country, we say, it's okay to say, I don't like math. Or that there's a math team. No such thing as math team. Everyone can do math. Right? You would never say, I don't do reading. I do math. So I'm looking at I will stay here for a little bit, so feel free to come up and talk to me if you need to. If you need to email me, I didn't put my email address on me, but it's this is my first name, Spencer.Jameson@FCPS, Fairfax County Public Schools .edu, and I'll answer you. Okay. Thank you, and thank your partner for working with them today. And you guys have a wonderful night. Thank you.